Have you ever struggled with shame and imposter syndrome? If so, you're like most entrepreneurs and coaches I know, and this episode is for you. We're going to get a lot of wisdom from Mark Hanson on how to overcome shame and imposter syndrome. Welcome to the Sales Strategies for Christian Coaches podcast. I'm Justin Janowski, your host. And I started this podcast because I remember being a new coach and not knowing how to build a business on the coaching side of things. My first time trying to run a coaching business, got one client and went out of business. On my second attempt, I got 3 clients and promptly went out of business. And 6 years after my first try, I launched a business where I did over $250,000 in revenue the first year. And for me, the biggest difference was learning how to build a system around sales and marketing and a business that could consistently attract new clients. That's what this podcast exists for, is to help you with all those same things. And today, I'm super excited to have my friend Mark Hanson here. Mark is a pastor. He's a lover of Cops Burgers in Milwaukee, where he spent a little bit of time and where I live now. And he's become a great friend. He's been a client over the last year and just one of the most salt of the earth good guys you could ever possibly meet. Today, he works with Christian men, helping them overcome shame and shutting down and imposter syndrome and the things that really hold us back. And I'm really happy to have him here. Mark, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Justin. Good to be with you.
Why don't you share a little bit of your journey in how you decided to become a coach and how you narrowed in on this topic?
Well, the coaching thing I did not realize I've been doing for probably 30 years. Or maybe I should say I've been being prepared to be a coach for 30 years. And a good friend of ours, Nate Bailey, introduced me to you and your CCA call on Wednesdays. And as soon as I got on it, I thought, this is my tribe. These are my people. And from there, it just accelerated and went to CCA Live. That was the pivotal point for me, was that conference, that this is something, it was solidified in my mind. This is what I have to do. This is the calling I believe in my life right now. And the reason I work with who I work with is because, as I understand it, many coaches they coach people that are who they were at one time. So I was a guy who lived under the curse of shame. And, about 25 years ago, my wife and I got some help with that in our lives, changed our lives dramatically, and realized it impacted my ministry. It impacted my marriage, my relationships, everything. And so, that's why I work with Christian men who are shut down to show up, and so they can stand fast and be the people that God wants them to be, and make the contribution that they need to make. So,
thank you for sharing that. There's so much wisdom in that. And it is true that a lot of coaches coach the people that they are or they used to be.
Mhm.
And it's also true that some coaches don't recognize the obvious truth that's one of the best ways forward in terms of target audiences. So if you're listening to this and you're trying to figure out who you should coach and what clients you should help, there's a lot of wisdom in what Mark said about recognizing who we've been, the things that we've overcome, because you can resonate so closely with a person who is like you. You can help somebody do the things that you've done or overcome the challenges that you've overcome. And, one of the things I know about coaches and trainers and speakers is they resonate at a deeper level with their audience when they have enough vulnerability to share that they've gone through some of the same challenges, that they've faced some of the same fears and flaws and imperfections. And the fact that we're ordinary and just like our clients actually makes us appeal to them so much more.
Sure.
Yeah, so you mentioned the conference. We've got our Christian Coaches Academy Live conference coming up very soon. It's July 15th through 17th in Milwaukee. This is 2026 we're talking about. And if people haven't signed up yet, go to f2itribe.com/CCA Live 2026 and join us there. I would love to have people at the conference with us. Mark, you came last year.
Yeah.
And you had a pretty empowering experience. Why do you think somebody who's listening to this, who's a coach, maybe they've been in our community for a while, maybe they just discovered us on this podcast, why should they come and join us at the live conference?
Well, I will say this. One of the reasons is your system. I'm going to call it a system for lack of a better term. As I've gone through your sales school and I had purchased I'm going to call it your offer, I guess, is what you had offered last year, and just everything about that. Part of it was for me is I knew if I'm going to do this, the coaching piece I kind of had down.
Mhm.
It was the business, the marketing, the branding. I wouldn't have known any of that stuff, and it has been so enlightening and enriching for me to learn that stuff. It's new language for me in some ways. I've had my pocket of language, and so now I'm learning new language, and I love it. And I love your whole approach that sales is love.
Mm.
And that put me so at ease to just say, this is about helping people on a different level, on a different level. And there was so much rich information and just the connections beyond just the Wednesday call that I was on, but to go there and to make connections. I still text some of those people and say, how you doing? Just the whole network and the support and encouragement
Mm.
that I have not experienced in other situations. I'll just put it that way. That it's like, yeah, how can I help you? What would be helpful to you right now? I just love it. I just love it.
That's so great.
So
Thank you for sharing that. And you
yeah,
came down one morning and just found yourself eating breakfast with Tom Ziegler.
yeah, and that was one of those God moments for me because I was like, well, can I pastor and coach at the same time? And he was so funny. He goes, well, would your church be up Sunday? I said, no. What's the problem here? So yeah, it's good stuff. Everything that you had in that offer has just contributed
Yeah.
to me, not just from the coaching perspective, but relationships, even with, I'm still pastoring. So even that, I've been able to apply some of those things in that situation too. So
Super cool. By the
yeah,
way, you and your wife are coming to the conference this year, and so
yes,
people who are
yes,
listening, like, they might be lucky enough to come down for breakfast and find themselves sitting next to Mark Hanson.
I know it. And who knows what God may do in that situation.
So let's talk more about the work.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
you use words like shame, shutting down, toxic shame, imposter syndrome. Can you just kind of walk us through what do you know that people are facing in their own minds that's really causing them to struggle as entrepreneurs, as leaders, and just in life in general? What's the common process look like for people?
Well, a lot of people don't realize that they're dealing with toxic shame. I did not realize it when I started my own healing journey, Justin. And that's a very long story, interesting story how all that came about. But the Reader's Digest condensed version is, you know, the Lord put my wife and I in the presence of this person who dealt with shame. And, I've maintained we don't talk much about shame in the church in my circle. We talk a lot about guilt.
Yeah.
And what I realized was what shame was doing to me. And it really it was keeping me from being who I really was because
Hmm.
I was trying to be someone that I thought I was supposed to be instead of being the person that I was created to be. And so I see that so many times. And the funny thing is, of course, I differentiate between I hate to call it healthy shame, but I see healthy shame as being it's humility, and humility is not a bad thing. Humiliation, toxic shame is another situation. That's what kills us, gets us really in a bad spot. I often say it's in my dissertation for my doctorate too. Is healthy shame keeps us grounded, kind of like an electrical circuit, which I'm not an electrician. That's another field I'm not in, but I know enough. You got to have a grounding wire in there somewhere, a
Hmm.
grounding rod or something. Keeps it so that you're functioning in a positive way. But toxic shame keeps us grounded in the sense of like a plane that can't fly. And so the toxic shame keeps us from really excelling, being who we're supposed to be, doing what we're supposed to be doing. And so once we see that, of course, I've been working in this field for 20 years. I can spot someone's toxic shame pretty quickly. All I got to do is talk to them for a few minutes, and it's like it'll come out. And the thing for me is I just want to go in there and say, okay, come on, don't let that have control of me because I know what it did to me. It shut me down from being who I really was. I might have been doing this other thing where I was showing everybody, oh yeah, I'm a good pastor and I'm this and I'm that. But down deep, I was like, oh, I was a people pleaser like you wouldn't believe. And so, yeah, it shut me down from really reaching my potential and being the person that God created me to be.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing this. I wrote down as I'm taking notes and learning, you were trying to be the person you thought you were supposed to be
Yeah.
rather than being the person you were created to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What does that look like for other people?
I see it all the time. Recently, I was having a conversation with someone, and they were sharing about a loved one who'd been someone kind of tore into them at a family gathering, and they talked to the person later and said, "Oh, they didn't mean it." It was funny. They saw it as this person showing grace to the person that tore into them. I said, "That's not grace. That's shame." I mean, they were almost like dismissing what had happened to him. And the difference between guilt and shame, we use them interchangeably. They're not the same thing. Guilt is what happens. I punch you in the nose, which I would never do, by the way, but I punch you in the I should feel bad about it.
Mm.
But shame goes to beyond that, that it's not just I should feel bad, I am bad.
Yeah.
It goes to the heart of who I am, that there is something innately wrong with me. Of course, the lie of shame is that I'm not enough. We can hear that in different ways. For myself, I hear it doesn't matter. I don't matter. I don't matter, which is another way of saying I'm not enough. So I text you, you don't get back to me for 4 days. See, I don't matter to Justin. No, you've been on vacation, not taking calls, but I didn't know that. My wounds tell me um, that I'm not enough. I don't matter to you. So that can mess with a person in a terrible, terrible way, because then the stories just keep going from there. And so then all of a sudden you text me back and say, "Oh, hey, Mark, I was on vacation. Sorry to get back to you." And it's like, oh, and I give all this energy away that is not, believing a lie. The lie says that I don't matter, and that it is a lie. Well, I
Wow.
probably don't matter to some people, but those people don't matter. So,
Wow.
I can spot it. Usually it's just talking to someone for a few minutes, but shame comes from things that have usually been done to us, intentionally or unintentionally. I tell people, if I get cut with a knife on purpose or cut with a knife on accident, it's still going to leave a wound that has to be addressed somewhere along the line. So, yeah, so it's very crippling, and people today are walking around with shame all the time. And sometimes it's the wound does not come from something someone did to us, but maybe that we wanted from them or needed from them that didn't happen. I work with men. How many young men, especially today, dad's not in the picture? And that can be, or dad leaves or something, or mom leaves even. It's like, what did I do? You didn't do anything. It probably had nothing to do with you. How many children of divorce, take that on, that, "Oh, it must have been me." No, it wasn't you at all, but we can take that on like it's us, so that shame can just, times we asked for love and we didn't get it, or we needed something from someone and it didn't happen. Core longings not being met can be very traumatic. So yeah, and shame and trauma, trauma and shame go hand in hand. I always say trauma can create shame, but shameful incidences create trauma. And unless you're a hermit, you're living up in some mountain or something, you live with people. We live in a world that we bump into each other sometimes, and sometimes it's not always pretty. So
Wow. Man, I'm feeling a lot as you're talking about this. And I know people listening are feeling a lot too, because this shows up for so many of us. And I know it shows up for coaches and entrepreneurs, and it shows up as imposter syndrome oftentimes. And I felt this when I was a new coach, and especially in my first two attempts to run a coaching business when I failed. And then I was trying again the third time, and I kept wondering, am I good enough? Can I really do this? Like, what are people going to think? I had this interesting feeling that like I wanted to post on social media about my coaching business. And I found myself in the early days feeling a fear or an
Mhm.
anxiety around what would the people I went to high school think? Even
Yeah,
though even people I wasn't in touch with, hadn't been in touch with for 15 years, but that was what I worried about was what
yeah,
would they think? Like, oh, that guy's coaching and telling other people how to live their lives and how to do their stuff. I started thinking like about all my flaws and all the mistakes I've made. And
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
could definitely see how that showed up for me. And I think it's showing up for a lot of coaches, a lot of entrepreneurs as this thing that prevents them from marketing, from prospecting, from holding sales calls, from making their offer, and from actually fulfilling the dream of their business is because they're worried that they're not good enough. And the truth is, so many of them are holding themselves to a standard of perfection to be good enough to make their offer and to start actually helping people. And they're holding themselves back because of this. I know that awareness is the first key to transformation.
Yeah.
And so, us opening the door to this conversation, you bringing this wonderful topic, it's such an important topic to the
Yeah.
podcast today. I'm sure people are gaining awarenesses, even as I'm gaining an awareness as you're sharing and talking and teaching. I'm like, oh yeah, that was this. And awareness is that first step to transformation. But let's imagine now for a moment that someone listening is gaining a new awareness. They're like, yeah, you know what? I have been staying grounded and holding myself back and shutting down
Yeah.
because of toxic shame and imposter syndrome. I know that's true. What can they do as a first step or a first few steps to begin overcoming this?
Uh, awesome question. And you touched on part of it there is the awareness. We can't change or heal what we don't acknowledge. I mean, at some point we have to just say, this is an issue. I've surprised people because I've told them I've gone to a counselor before. As one of my professors in the seminary told me, he goes, sometimes you just need to go in for an oil change. You just need someone to process with who has a different set of eyes on the situation. And I've never faulted or judged anybody who went in for counseling because I need it. And I still do go get counseling from people. But at some point we got to say, this isn't working. And I need to get some help. And what we're taught in all, I always think this is so funny, part of our education system is do your own work. Don't look at your neighbor's work. Don't cheat. Don't whatever. And then they're thrown into a corporate world, which you've been in. And it's like, now work as a team.
Mm.
And you're like, I can't do that because I'm not supposed to share my work and they're not supposed to share their work. And then probably I've heard these situations. Someone takes your idea and next thing you know, you've been bamboozled because someone got credit for something you did. But exposure, I often say the curse is the cure for toxic shame.
Mm.
And the curse of shame, Justin, is exposure and the fear of being found out. So, but the cure is exposure and being found out. And I use the example sometimes of a beach ball. And we've all been in a pool or at the lake or something. And we have the beach ball and every kid, how long can I hold the beach ball under the water? And it pops up and we laugh. And then I tell people, well, so I'm giving a little free piece here. So if you were to take a Sharpie and write on there all your shame wounds on that beach ball, and we go through life holding that beach ball under the water, so to speak.
Mm.
And we're doing everything we can for no one to see what happened to me. I can't let anybody see this shame that I'm carrying. And then something happens and the beach ball shoots up in the air. We scramble, grab that beach ball. I got to get it back down underneath that water because if someone found out, what would they think of me? They would judge me. They would reject me, whatever the case would be, whatever the lie is we're telling ourselves.
Yeah.
There's such a relief with it, though, when we just let the beach ball come up because now it's exposed. Now it's out there. And so even if Justin comes and says, see, Mark, I see what happened to you. Now I can say, yep, you sure do.
Yeah.
And now it doesn't have power
That's
over
right.
us anymore because now we can say, okay, now I want to work on this.
Yeah.
And grace, whenever grace meets shame, grace always wins. And
Amen.
then we can start, because once it's out there, now we can deal with it.
That's right.
Now we can deal with it. And now we can start showing up even
Yeah.
with our stuff. Because at the end of the day, all God's people got stuff.
That's right.
Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, and get help with it. So
That's
my
right.
thought is get help so you can show up in life and stand fast.
Yeah. And as we know as Christians, like God can use everything for good and for his
Yeah.
glory. And oftentimes we feel like we're alone. I had somebody say it was in our team meeting, my Faith to Influence team meeting. We've got a relatively big team now, so I can say this in some anonymity still. But
You got
we
a
had
great
a
team.
woman on our thank you, a woman on our team say, "Man, I just feel like I'm struggling to have adult friends, and I feel lonely, and I feel like I see
Yeah.
everyone around me has all these friends, and I feel like I'm the only one who doesn't have
Yeah.
these close
Yeah.
friendships and proximity, who would celebrate important days with me.
Yeah.
And she said this, and she had some tears, and it was really an emotional share, and I'm obviously shortening the story a little bit. But immediately, I mean, we had a group of 8 people on this call, and
Yeah.
immediately 4 of the other people on the call said, "Me too, I'm going through the exact same thing,"
Yeah.
and 3 of them cried as they were sharing about it. And so, like, it was this, and it ended up creating a moment of community
Yes.
and shared support and love and understanding for one another and empathy, and so many good things came out of her share. But
Yeah.
she had this lie, and I think this is what happens with shame so often. It's only me. I'm the only one.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
never the only one.
Yeah.
And when we're there's different ways we can share, right? And depending on the thing and depending on the time in your life, the season of your life, what you're in is probably dependent on how you share. In some cases, you just share with that therapist or counselor, right?
Right.
Or in
Right.
some cases, maybe it's one trusted friend or family member that you share with. Or maybe it's a small group, like a prayer group or a Bible
Yeah.
study that you can
Yeah.
just trust in that environment to bring the story forward. And at some point, for some people, it might be something that you share even more publicly and it helps other people to heal. I've heard a lot in the coaching, training, speaking space, people talking about the idea that your mess is your message. And
Yes.
and the thing that you went through, and this is what you're kind of illustrating for us here. You're like, yeah, I've been through some toxic shame, and I've beaten myself up, and I've held myself down. And this is what it did to me. And when I overcame that this way, then this is what was possible for me. And that's how you can now be a light for others who are
Yeah.
going through the same thing. And I remember what it was like to be a failed coach, beating myself up in imposter syndrome, struggling to make sales and figure out how to move forward. And then I learned some things and I got a great mentor and I overcame that. Now I'm having success. And here's the path of how to do that. But if we try to pretend that those first seasons didn't happen, we would lessen our connection with people so greatly. And so I think there's such wisdom in that, being willing to let the beach ball above the water and let people see us. And it might be a single person at first, it might be a small, trusted group,
Yeah.
and it could be a public share at some point for coaches, trainers, leaders,
Yeah.
speakers who want to help others. And
Right.
having discernment and knowing what's right for you in the right
Right.
time is important. But
Yeah.
I
Because
love
not everybody's
that
safe.
invitation. That's
Not
right. Not
everybody's
everybody's
safe.
safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that this is how we deepen relationships too. And so I love this. I think this is a great topic. Can I ask one more question, which is, for the coach who's been facing some of this, who's listening to this, the coach, the entrepreneur, they want to take the next step forward in their business. What's something practical that is just coming to mind? I'm putting you on the spot here, but something practical that's coming to mind that they could do this week or this month to move their business forward if they've been feeling stuck due to this
Yeah.
topic?
Yeah. I ask people this question a lot. What is it costing you
Hmm.
to not be honest with yourself about what's going on in your life? I was talking to somebody the other day and they were doing the whole guys don't feel like, okay, that's okay. We could break down all the different kinds of guys, personalities and stuff, and the Myers-Briggs and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, I ask myself, what is it costing me if I continue to let this, whatever it is, have power over me? If I don't, as you said, put it out there on Facebook that I'm coaching now, or whatever the case is, or what's it costing me if I don't share? And I love how you share, Justin, that you had one client the first time and it dropped the next time. The old Japanese proverb, fall down 7, stand up 8, whatever it is. They're not failures, they're learning
That's right.
opportunities, is what I've learned. And so the question I ask myself, what is the cost if I don't do
Mm.
this, if I don't push through it, if I don't deal with this? What is the cost? And the cost is, it can be many things, but other lives being impacted. My children not having maybe the father or the mother that they really need. One of my favorite quotes from I think it's called "The War of Art" by Stephen Pressfield. Don't rob us of your contribution. Give us what you've
Mm.
got.
Mm.
And there we need that so much today. Is for the people that you have something to offer, And toxic shame wants to keep that down. And that comes from the enemy of our soul, obviously. And we're the ones, the battle's going on in our mind. We're the ones telling ourselves. It's funny, as I've shared with people reluctantly at times, I'm coaching now. I'm like, oh boy, what's the reaction going to be? There's the shame coming out.
Mm,
And I have never had anybody tell me, that is so you, Mark. That
mhm.
is so you need to do that. Yeah, it's we have a contribution to make and we need to make it.
Yeah.
And so that would be my thing is to ask yourself, what's it costing you
Yeah.
to not deal with this?
Yeah.
And then I see it in younger people sometimes. And I think my or late 30s when this hit us. And I'm like, man, how if I would have known then 15 years earlier, I could have avoided so much because hurting people hurt people. And I don't
Mhm.
know how many people I hurt because I was hurting and my dysfunctional behavior is coming up. But
Mm,
it I realize now if I don't do this, it's going to have a lasting impact.
yeah.
If I don't, it's gonna have a lasting impact if I do. So why not do it? And reframing things is big for me.
Yep.
Here's the story I'm telling myself, but what if there's another story
Hmm.
coming out of this? You had one client, you had 3 clients, third time it took off. That inspires me.
Mhm.
And you could say, "Boy, I can't tell anybody about that." I'm glad you do.
That's right.
It reminds me to keep swinging the bat. Keep
Yeah.
swinging the bat. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing about it is some people would be afraid to show the vulnerability of the
Yeah.
failed attempts,
Yeah.
but that's actually what makes people want to work with you more and makes you
Right.
more relatable.
Right. Yeah.
And I think you're hitting on something important here. In our sales process, we call it potential futures, but the
Okay.
question of what's gonna happen if I don't solve this problem,
Yeah.
and on the other side of it, what's possible when I do? And when we can envision the future and the
Yeah.
consequences and we can see what's at stake, hopefully that can get us enough leverage to take action. Now, it doesn't mean all the fear goes away. And
Yep.
so what we
Yep.
oftentimes tell people is you got to do it scared. But if you get out there and take those first few attempts and do it scared and you've got enough leverage to act and you know what's at stake and you know how important it is to you, once you've gotten a handful of repetitions in, whether it whatever it is, telling your stories, speaking, selling, making your offer, etc., it gets easier and easier and easier, and our confidence will grow over time. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for sharing this. Mark, I know that you said when we were talking before, if this topic really resonated with somebody, and I'm sure it is resonating with some people right now, I want to encourage you to email Mark. Mark would be happy to receive your feedback. He'd be happy to have a one on one call with you to talk to you about the thing. He could be that safe place where you
Mhm.
could have a conversation about shame or imposter syndrome or whatever you're dealing with. You can email Mark at standfastcoaching.com, Mark at standfastcoaching.com, just to share feedback or to connect further on this topic. Man, I hope that people come join us at CCA Live and meet you
Yeah.
in person.
Yes.
Mark,
Love
there are a
it.
few people in the world I'd rather have a burger with and just chat with. You're such a great guy. I love you so much. If I'm
Love you
ever
too,
4
man.
days late on responding to your text, give me the benefit of the doubt. I always love you. I promise. But that story is a great reminder. It's so true
Yeah.
because that's happening all the
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
And so I'm so glad that you brought that here. Anyways, I
Yeah.
love you. Thank you
Great.
for providing
Love you
so
too,
much
Brad.
wisdom today. And for everyone else, I'll see you next week. Cheers.